Troy Aikman unleashes the absolute truth about the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones. So we're going to be going through that and 3 other stories in today's video. So make sure to like this video, and if you want more Dallas Cowboys news content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting that red button down below. The first story is Troy Aikman reveals the honest truth about what's holding the Dallas Cowboys back. Troy Aikman has seen himself become awfully candid in the booth, especially since heading over to ESPN to be the voice of Monday Night Football alongside Joe Buck. A lot of that candidness has come when discussing his Dallas Cowboys, and as Aikman met with reporters in Dallas during an event celebrating the city being named the #1 sports business city by the Sports Business Journal, it was only fitting that the Hall of Famer was asked about America's team. Particularly, the one question that stood out was the 57-year-old Aikman being asked about what one could perceive as a sense of entitlement around the franchise. He didn't mince words. "I don't know about a sense of entitlement," he said. "I think that when you play for the Cowboys, every national show leads off with the Cowboys. And there's a lot of perks to playing for the Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot of benefits to playing for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think the challenge for the organization and for the head coach is to be able to still keep the players with their edge. And so I think that's the challenge of this job. In a lot of ways, there's so many other things that are happening within the organization. It's easy to get caught up in it. There's tours going around the building, and there's a lot of distractions, if you will, and I think it creates another layer that a head coach and a staff and players have to try to compartmentalize so that they can go and be the best football players they can be." Aikman was asked point blank how much Jerry Jones was responsible for a lot of distractions. "I mean, he's the boss," Aikman said. "So whatever is done, it's because he's okay with it. It just is what it is. I mean, it's been that way. It's always been that way. And whether or not that ultimately keeps this team from doing what they hope to do, I don't know. Does it just rear its head in January? I mean, why wasn't it a problem during the regular season? So it's a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around when you see the number of wins that they've had. And yet, so much disappointment in the postseason." Aikman's words highlight the delicate dance the Cowboys must perform, harnessing the benefits of their brand while keeping their edge. Can they reconcile these seemingly conflicting forces and finally break through the January barrier? Troy Aikman had his fair share of criticism and hard times as quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, both in the beginning and in the end of his career, so he can, on some level, relate to what Dak Prescott is up against as the face of the most scrutinized and criticized franchise in all of sports. Aikman, a former first overall pick in 1989, fell out of the gate to a record of 0-11 as a rookie and suffered a combined record of 14-24 over his first 3 seasons. Needless to say, he was then labeled by many outside of the building as anything but the chosen one, only to prove them all wrong in year 4 and beyond, ultimately leading the Cowboys to 3 Super Bowl wins via a Hall of Fame career. Prescott, a former 4th-round pick entering his 9th year, is still working to overcome the postseason obstacle, but Aikman hasn't written the 3-time Pro Bowler off. "I still believe in Dak," said Aikman, speaking at an event honoring the city of Dallas for being recognized as the #1 sports business city by Sports Business Journal. "I feel like until you do it, there are always those criticisms. Peyton Manning heard that his first 3 years he didn't win a playoff game, and then you look back at it now and you can't imagine anybody would question whether or not he could win a playoff game." Prescott and the Cowboys have taken the NFC East crown in 2 of the last 3 seasons to go along with a regular season record of 36-15, but they're also now 1-2 in the tournament that followed. Their loss to the Green Bay Packers was as demoralizing as you'll see, and the accountability can be spread nearly evenly across the board: offense, defense, special teams, and coaching, raising questions on if Prescott, who produced an MVP frontrunner season before the wheels came off of the offense in January, can end the Super Bowl drought that extends back to Aikman's days in the driver's seat. "I do know that we all draw on our past experiences," said Aikman, "and when we don't have great experiences, then those become hard to overcome, and I think that's the challenge for Dak. The question for him, and really for the team, isn't so much what happens in the regular season, but rather how you play once you get into the postseason. That makes for a long year when that's the way it works. And I've been there as well, as far as when the expectations are high. The Cowboys have been through that earlier in their franchise history, so the pressure gets higher, for sure, as they go into next season. The second story is Dallas Cowboys DT named breakout candidate for the next NFL season. After flashes of brilliance during the 2023 season, one Dallas Cowboys defender is now being projected for a significant step up in 2024. Cowboys fans have already gotten to know DT Osa Odigizua, but the analysts at PFF think he could be introducing himself on a national level soon. In a recent article picking breakout candidates for the 2024 season, Odigizua is named for the Cowboys. The blurb mentions the 25-year-old's hot start in 2023 and that he was still being graded well despite his production dropping. Odigizua managed just 3 sacks on the year, all within the first 2 weeks of the season, and has never finished with more than 4 in a year. The January 26 article reads, however, he also finished as the 15th highest graded interior defensive lineman with the 12th best PFF pass rush grade. He should deliver even bigger sack numbers in future seasons as long as he continues to produce the strong underlying metrics that he has continued to build upon in his NFL career. Odigizua has provided another pass rushing threat for an already stacked Cowboys defensive line. While Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence earn the plaudits on the edge, Odigizua is disrupting from the interior. Even earning a few sacks a season as a defensive tackle is big, and Odigizua has done it twice. The former UCLA Bruin has 7 sacks over the last 2 campaigns, and he's contributing elsewhere too. Pro Football Reference states that he totaled 9 tackles for loss in 2023. For context, only Parsons and Lawrence had more on the Cowboys roster. And while it was disappointing that he did not earn a sack after week 2, he was still credited with 13 QB hits. It's difficult for 6'2", 280-pound to land sacks on modern quarterbacks. Instead, what teams really want to see is a player push an interior lineman back into the pocket. If a QB can't step up into his line to make throws, he's going to have a hard time. Odigizua has provided that so far, but if PFF's grades and analysis are correct, he could be due for a monstrous season in 2024. One of the reasons 2024 could be a breakout campaign for Odigizua is that it will be a contract year. He will be a free agent in 2025 after completing the 4th year of his rookie deal, and he will be looking to maximize his second NFL contract. That being said, the Cowboys could look to reward him early and potentially save money in the process. Odigizua has looked the part in his first 3 years, but hasn't broken out yet. The primary problem with doing that is the cap space situation. Dallas is currently $11.5 million over the 2024 cap limit, but player releases and restructures will help. But considering the need to pay players like ceedee Lamb, contracts like Odigizua's aren't the priority. Either way, it creates an interesting situation, both the Cowboys and the defensive tackle. He's got plenty to play for, and Dallas has plenty to consider ahead of the 2024 season. The third story is why the Cowboys moving on from Dak Prescott could be a grave mistake. Dak Prescott is the most polarizing player on the Dallas Cowboys. Fans either love him or hate him depending on how much of the blame they believe he deserves for the team's letdown performances. The 8-year veteran quarterback is all over the place in terms of how he's perceived. In 2022, he led the league in interceptions and had the entire national media up in arms, only to do a 180-degree turnaround and lead the league in touchdown passes this past year. He earned All-Pro honors and was the topic of many conversations about whether he was deserving of winning this year's Most Valuable Player award. Wow, what a contrast. As great of a season as he had last year, Prescott struggled in the playoffs. He made poor decisions and looked panicked throughout most of the game. He had 2 costly picks and didn't finalize the team's first scoring drive until the clock had hit double zeros in the first half. This marks the 3rd consecutive season that the Cowboys have been bounced from the playoffs in a game where Dak has not lived up to expectations. That is not to say that he's the blame, but he's certainly not helping. With another disappointing playoff exit, doubt lurks across the organization. Whether it's coaches or players, people are questioning some of the team's most influential contributors, with Dak being one of them. Is he really the guy for this football team? Adding a little fuel to the fire is the notion that the Cowboys traded away a 4th-round draft pick to acquire former 3rd overall pick Trey Lance right before the start of last season. Granted, this is just a let's see what he's got sort of move, but they wouldn't have made such a move if they didn't believe he had a chance of manifesting into a legit NFL quarterback. In the spirit of looking at all angles, we went over that scenario a couple of weeks ago. Moving on from Prescott is risky business. If Lance had a good sample size of strong play, it would be a lot easier to do, just as the Cowboys had before they moved on from Tony Romo and gave Dak the keys to the offense. But they don't. Passing on Prescott means the team is going to take a huge leap of faith that whatever's behind door number 2 can successfully operate the team's most important position on the roster. The last time the Cowboys had to make such a transition without having a good plan already in place, it did not go well. After Troy Aikman's retirement, the Cowboys looked to the draft to find his replacement.